When it shall come that the poor are free from the ravages of hunger and pain, the streets from the homeless and the deprived, the jails from prisoners, the businesses from greed and corruption, the public sector from inefficiencies and incompetence, then only shall we boast of a nation, of a country, and of a constitution. So, gentlemen and brothers and sisters, when we deliberate, let's keep these thoughts in mind.
States have failed the poor. Big business, the capitalist system, has also failed the poor. And we have to turn back to religion. Of course, it's not a smooth process. There are problems as well. So we find that there's this process of global restructuring. It's a very bland term, and it's putting pressure on the ability of states to meet social and welfare demands. So philanthropy and voluntarism is being presented in political and academic discourses as a panacea to social and political problems experienced both in the first world and the developing world. However, development concerns relating to liberation from poverty, inequality, vulnerability, and deprivation have permeated all religions. In fact, all religions are campaigning for a new order in which generosity and caring are essential values. Religious groups are seen as important agents in influencing their followers and supporting development projects. Religion can be viewed as an influential agent for development because it emphasizes universal principles of compassion, service, unity, justice, and reconciliation. Religions are very clear that you have to give. The religious sector has let us down here, and the dominant faith is the Christian sector. We have to use faith groups to regenerate value systems, to recreate families, because some of the social and criminal consequences that we're experiencing right now emanate from the fact that apartheid destroyed the family. And while the middle class is able to reconstruct itself very quickly, the problem is right at the working class level. There is a market called the Warwick Avenue market that some of you may know. It's got a strong link with indentured laborers, and many of us are descendants of those indentured laborers. There's been an attempt to close down that market, and replace it with a mall. It means that the livelihoods of about 8,000 people are at stake, poor people. People who are making an honest living are going to be pushed into that barrier where criminality and all of that becomes inevitable. I want this conference to think about it because tomorrow, I believe you've got the city management and the premier of this province who are decision makers on this issue, and I would hope that you would have a chance to put those questions to them, that we are pushing people who are making a decent, honest living so that a mall is created, and a mall favors the middle and upper class. It does not favor the poor class. I want you to think about that, and I'll leave you with that thought. Thank you.
Mr. Yusuf Baker spoke about coordination, and that stuck in my head. And I thought, we have this upsurge of private, organized, so-called religious organizations, all these endeavors. And Prof. Bridgemaraj has just alluded to those, the pockets of excellences that are happening all over South Africa. On paper, we seem to have got it right. In terms of the massive research that was carried throughout South African religious giving and philanthropy. But on the ground, we don't seem to have an organized, coordinated kind of effort that monitors it. And I'm not sure what you called it, but he gave it a very interesting organization that will then oversee how social giving and philanthropy happens in South Africa. We need this overall body, and I'm hoping that the conference is going to move into this thought, that at the end of this conference, by tomorrow, that you have this organization developed, because it is multi-faith represented here, And if that happens, then we can pool the efforts without corroding any of the religious and cultural beliefs of the several parallel organizations that are running along differently, but with the same single purpose.
I think it's important for us to share our ideas, because we tend, I think, in organizations to reinvent the wheel. I mean, look at my own community. We have a lot of organizations with a lot of overlapping strategies and implementation of different projects. And I think we need to look at world history as well. I mean, we live in sub-Saharan Africa. And sub-Saharan Africa, of the 45 poorest countries in the world, sub-Saharan Africa has 20 of the poorest countries in the world. This despite the fact that since 1956, $1 trillion of aid has poured into Africa. $1 trillion of aid, money has been thrown at Africa. In fact, some of the interpreters and commentators say that that money has in fact been the cause of a lot of decline within Africa. But it's not money that's going to solve our problems. I've just come back from a conference in the Sudan, and Sudan is, is not a very rich country. But I was impressed by the kind of governmental and NGO partnerships that has been entered into by the Sudanese government on sort of a rand-to-rand basis, and how that has inspired development in the rural areas in the Sudan. Maybe we should make it conditional upon organizations of different religious background partnering in a particular project. I think that is long overdue in South Africa, because we've come from a system where we were not only divided politically and ethnically, but we were also divided religiously.
There's a famous saying, and I think it comes from sort of Christian theology, that if you give a man a fish and he will eat for a day, if you feed or if you teach a man how to fish, he will eat forever. And I think for me that is one of the most important principles I've learned, is that you've actually got to go into communities and you've got to skill people, because it's not just about us giving charity and then people, taking that charity and they'll eat for a day perhaps. We need to actually teach people in these communities skills, and we need to actually train them so that they can actually become partners in terms of addressing and dealing with their poverty. Thank you.
There are two issues underlying your objectives, and that is looking at poverty alleviation or poverty eradication, and then looking at the other issue, which is human development or social development, and looking at promoting these two, human development. Then I'm also looking at charity. This is a question for the panelists, is to define for us very clearly what is poverty and what is human development or social development and what is charity. Because in attaining these three objectives, we will have to have a clear understanding what this really means. Thank you.
I'd like to make a comment on the Warwick market. Our own experiences with metro malls has been dismal. It has been, I think I'm being a traitor to the city of Johannesburg, but it has been a total disaster. We have removed organic traders. I say organic because they come naturally, spontaneously, and they begin their little businesses, and they are sustainable businesses. What the City Council did is to evict these natural traders and put them in a morgue-like structure that eventually killed their businesses. And I think what Professor Maharaj was saying, let us work towards retaining and prizing our cultural heritage.